Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, James Abraham. He is a former writer, editor, editorial writer, literary critic, and columnist with several newspapers, including the Milwaukee Journal, Tallahassee Democrat, Charlotte Sun, and Sarasota Herald-Tribune. He has written a well-received political biography that is used in university curricula and has published a collection of his insightful book essays. James is a popular writing coach, critic, and lecturer at writer centers and colleges. His Brook Broker Publishers, which he founded 15 years ago, has produced or edited more than 400 books in a variety of genres. James, who earned a history degree from Oberlin College, often writes and lectures on American history and its pluralistic, multicultural society. After the 9/11 tragedy, James organized a countrywide discussion group at a local mosque. His interest in civic discourse led him to create a series of lectures for Black History Month, which has evolved into a weekly lecture series. James is a native of Baltimore, Maryland. He's married to a schoolteacher and has 2 children. And I am happy to say that James Abraham, the book broker, is also a friend of mine. And I'm so happy that we have a chance to catch up today, because when I knew you, James, we both were in the newspaper business, working at a local newspaper, and we became friends. And today you're out there helping people write and publish books, and I actually help people promote their books. So it's kind of an interesting thing that how we both came from a similar background, but of course we're on different paths. And it's really exciting to know that in the last 15 years that you've helped people produce and edit and get more than 400 books published. So first thing, congratulations, and it's so nice to talk to you today.
Well, thank you, Tammy. It's good to talk to you, too. Yeah, what I remember about us working together is just what a hard worker, nice person you were, so I'm glad you're doing well.
Well, thank you so much. Let's get right into this, because a lot of my listeners are people who want to write or publish books, and they are at that point where they're like, I do not know where to start. So let's go ahead and walk them through the process of working with you, because from what I remember about you, that you are somebody who really knows and loves words. And so you're somebody that somebody could get that story out. So what is the writing, publishing process?
Well, Tammy, I wrote my first story when I was in the 2nd grade. I was 7 years old. And my teacher, it was about Squanto helping the pilgrims, so the first Thanksgiving. And so the teacher had me read it out loud, and everybody in class clapped. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I had a real supportive family, school teachers. I read omnivorously. And so I found my voice early on. I became a journalist, a columnist, an editorial writer. And I just had a voice. I knew how to say what was on my mind. But I noticed for whatever reason, a lot of people can't do that for whatever reason. So when I started my business, what I found was that people had stories to tell. They had books to publish, but they didn't know how to articulate them. So I was able to bring what I've learned, both as a vocation and as an avocation, my love of words, to helping them find their voice.
I think that's a really important thing for people, because so many of us, we have literally been told to keep our mouths shut and to keep our stories to ourselves. So how do you help people bring out the stories and the authentic voice that they have?
Well, first, let's talk mechanically, Tammy. Older people who may not be familiar with a computer, I ask them to use a tape recorder. And what I do is actually interview them to get them going. We record their voice. Then I have my transcriptionists reproduce it so they could see sort of in print what they said. That helps us build copy or material for the actual book. In other cases, it's a matter of prompting people. For example, some people think if they wanted to write about their life, they had to start from the day they were born. But what I suggest is they start from a major event, meeting the right woman, getting that perfect job, almost dying, surviving a near-death incident. Start from that point and work forward and backwards. How'd you get to that point? How'd that point change you? So once you start prompting people, they'll understand that their story is there, waiting to be told. It just needs the right vessel to get it to flow into.
So the people that you've worked with, 400 people, do you have any person who stands out in your mind as maybe they were a reluctant storyteller, or they had some story that was just so phenomenal that you were just like amazed that you were the one that got to help them write it?
Yeah, my idol, the guy that I think about whenever I get tired or lazy or whatever, is a guy named Jonathan Fry. He was born with, well, he wasn't born with, he contracted Dufresne's syndrome when he was still a kid. This sort of robbed him of the ability to use his limbs. And so he was in a wheelchair for most of his life. His parents were really supportive, and they got him all the things that you'd get for a kid who couldn't really move around a lot. Railroad sets, building things, and video games. So Jonathan one day decided to stop watching the video games and write a novel, a sort of sword and sorcery novel, similar to the games that kids like to play, like Call of Duty or whatever. And so he took a class I was teaching at Florida Gulf Coast University, and he liked what I was saying and hired me to help him produce his book. So here's this guy who I really didn't know how bad Jonathan was doing at the time, but we produced that book. He liked it, got a very good response, and I helped him write a second one. And 5 months after the second one, he died. So this was a guy who had less ability than most of us have, physical ability, and he was in a lot of pain. But he wanted his story told, and he had the courage to stick with it. So I'm just glad he hired me, and he's sort of, well, he's an inspiration to me.
That's really beautiful, and the fact that he was able to get not one but two of his novels out and to leave that legacy. That brings me to the thought, why do most people want to write a book, and what types of books do you find most of your clients are writing?
Legacy books. They're the books that describe their lives and explain their lives, explain the decisions that they made. Or they're informative books, sort of cautionary tales. You know, don't go down this road, or if you do this or do that. I do a lot of fantasy, and fantasy, I guess again, Jonathan sort of led me to that genre. And these are stories where people become heroes and they solve problems that we find it hard to deal with in real life. So it's a variety of books. I've started doing children's books, and that's sort of a special joy. It's a different process. But again, it runs the gamut, Tammy. It seems like I'm fortunate enough to get clients who lead me into new genres. When I started, it was mainly novels. And now it's novels, memoirs, biographies, children's books, how-to manuals, professional journals. a variety of material.
Well, one of the things that I know in my adventures over the past 15 years, since I think both of us have basically started our businesses around the same time, I notice a lot of business people wanting to write books as the expert on a topic, because often those types of books are very useful for them to grow their business. And, so they write those types of books. But I know you help, again, a lot of people around the country, but also locally. And you have a big event coming up in December with quite a number of authors. What is the event, and is it a reading of their work? What is it exactly?
Well, Florida Gulf Coast University's Herald Court Center, located in Punta Gorda, has a writing program that I helped found about 10 years ago. Several of the writers who've gone through the writing program there have published books. So FGCU and I are sort of partnering together to produce something called a Caravan of Authors. It'll take place December 2nd through the 5th, each day from 5 to 7:30. We'll have 3 or 4 authors each day who'll read their work, do Q&As, give tips, and there'll also be writing classes during that same period.
So each author, they'll be talking about their different, the genres, because it was, I know that there were some different people listed, and you said that they'll be doing some Q&As, offering tips, and also there'll be writing classes, which for the area, and again, this is Punta Gorda, Southwest Florida, that's a pretty unique situation to have such a diverse and powerful programs. And Florida Gulf Coast University, I have worked with them also, and they really are open to doing some pretty phenomenal things for the public, lifelong learning and things like that. So I can really appreciate that. So I want to ask you a few more questions about publishing your books. Do you have any tips that you could give to people who are, let's say maybe they're on the fence, or they're like, okay, James, what should I do to prepare? You gave some really good ideas about starting at a life event. Let's give our audience a few more good ideas before I let you go.
Okay, I guess number one, try to spend as little money as possible. And what I mean by that, Tammy, is that wanting to publish a book, it's almost like being a gambler or like a sex addict or a drug addict, in the sense that you stop thinking logically. You have this great story, you have your legacy, and you want it told. And next thing you know, it's easy to wind up being taken advantage of. So my suggestion is get more than one opinion, get more than one quote, and get a price that works for you. Now it's going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. First, I said spend as little money as possible. But number two, get some professionals working with you. It's too easy to produce a book that looks so bad people won't read it, or read so bad that people will lose confidence in you. And so you need somebody who knows what they're doing to package your book, edit it, format it, give you a good cover design, so that the book has the respect that you deserve.
You are right on target, because often people, you're a wordsmith. You're somebody, you know how to use words, you know grammar, you know structure. And of course, because you're a writer and a storyteller, you know how to tell a story and how to make the words come to life on the page. and often people, they try to do it all themselves. You're right, I've seen it. And they don't know how to format a book so that it is readable. And especially in today's world where you have both a digital format and a paper or a hardcover format, it doesn't look the same, and you cannot format a hardcover book to fit, say, a Kindle book because of the way of the digital things. And again, you hit the nail on the head with the concept of, yes, spend as little as possible, but you still have to spend money to get the expert help. And you also said to get multiple opinions and then find somebody, this is important, you need to find somebody who you can connect with at a different level, like what you were saying, James, about interviewing people to pull their story out of them. Because if you don't have the right interviewer or you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to tell them some of those really deep things. So if you can go a little deeper on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I guess one of the things that has helped my business to survive is the fact that people could actually reach out and touch me, sit across the table from me, and talk to me. And when they do, they realize that I'm empathetic. I get their vision. And once I understand their vision, we're working toward the same goal. Usually the first thing I do when I meet with a prospective client is ask them to tell me about their book. What do they want out of the book? And I use that as the barometer by which to judge the quality of their work, how much more work is needed, what they need to do to make their product do what they want it to do. In the process, I sort of compare it to being a midwife, Tammy. It's a very intimate process if you're sincere about it. I feel every one of these stories. I think if you want to get your book done well, you have to find someone who's affordable, professional, but I'll tell you, most importantly, someone who gets your story.
I agree, and because, you know, we've all been in the situation where we figure out, that was the wrong fit. And, you know, people become unhappy when it is the wrong fit. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, James, what is the best way for them to do that?
Either give me a call. I'm at 941-258-4920. Or email me at bookbroker. That's book-broker@hotmail.com.
So give James a call, or you can send him an email. Could you repeat your phone number and that email again for me, James?
Sure. The phone number is 941-258-4920. The email address is book-broker@hotmail.com.
Thanks. So before we go off on our big adventures today, is there any last thing that you would like to add for anyone who's thinking about leaving that legacy or writing that business book or the novel or the fantasy or the children's book?
My favorite historian, a guy named Hendrik van Loon, once wrote that there is no good art created by starving artists in garrets. In other words, when you're fat and happy, when the sun's shining and you feel good, that's when you produce your best work. Where we live in Southwest Florida is an incubator for talent and for creativity. Too many of us, you know, when we were kids, we used to like to finger paint, draw, write, read, act, dance. Too many of us get that beaten out of us as we grow older and have to work for a living. So where we are right now, here in Southwest Florida, in this incubator of talent, is a good place to pull that book out that you've been thinking about and make it a reality.
Wow, that is some good advice, James. Everyone, if you want to make your book a reality, James Abraham is definitely the person to help you. And again, like I said, I've known James for many years, and it was funny because he is someone with a grasp of the language that most people don't have. And I had the privilege of being one of the editors where I would edit his work, and his words would just flow, and everything would just be so clear so any reader could understand. And that's the level of work that you get when you work with James, is something that is you, and it's authentic and real, yet it's packaged and perfect in your words so that you can leave that legacy that you'd like. So James, thank you so much for sharing with me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, Tammy. I'm glad you're doing well, and thanks for interviewing me.
Okay, thank you, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.